Ladies and gentlemen, we've got some super spicy news for y'all today. In terms of the update day news, because normally I make videos talking about it, not a lot, so I'm just going to briefly mention it here. They added the new free-to-play Goku. He's a purple unit, seems to be underwhelming, bit unfortunate, but it is what it is as a free-to-play unit. They added a new equip for LF Super Saiyan 4 Goku. It's the same thing like the equip for Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, and apparently it makes his damage a whole lot better, so that is phenomenal here. I don't have him, so I haven't been able to try it out myself, but that's good to hear. And then finally they added a banner where you can go and pull for Super Vegito or LF Super Saiyan 4. Those are like the two headliner units on like the banner picture. So I guess if you want either of those, you can go for it. But I would keep saving if you're saving for Christmas time, because I'm about to discuss something that probably relates to Christmas and will be super interesting. So as you can see here, we're over on my boy Spone's Twitter. Go follow him. If you have not, you can see his Twitter @ and all that stuff right there. But he does like mods and leaks and notices things that are in the game and brings them to light, you know, before they come out and everyone knows about them. Yeah. But this is interesting. We're talking about the unique gauge. And as you know, there are currently 3 characters in the game with unique gauges. That'd be LF UI Goku, LF Sword of Hope Trunks, and LF Perfect Cell. 3 gauges. All 3 are different. Now this is interesting. You can see here he says there's 4 total unique gauge icons, with the 4th being labeled attack, and it's currently being unused because we only have 3 characters with gauges currently. So let's run through this real quick here. This gauge here, this is the icon for the UI Goku gauge. Goku's gauge decreases when you just stand there. People attack, he dodges using Ultra Instinct, and so it's like a vanish essentially, but you don't have to use your actual vanish. And he can restore it by using blue cards and whatnot, so that's super nice. Again, the character looks like he's dodging, so it's a dodge type of gauge, so that's interesting. Next, went a little too far there. Next we got Trunks. This is for the new LF Sword of Hope Trunks, which Trunks, his gauge increases and he gets a whole bunch of buffs and whatnot when it gets to max, but his gauge increases by taking hits as well as using his green card. So that's how you can increase Trunks' gauge, and when you increase his gauge, he then gets a bunch of buffs. He gets some health back. He also gets endurance if you're running him with Future or Vegeta clan members. So that's another type of gauge we have in the game. And the third type of gauge we have in the game, which you can see, this one also makes sense. Like the Trunks one makes sense. It's like a defensive gauge, you know, by taking hits, because it's an armor, a chest piece of armor. That makes sense for defense. And then Cells makes sense because Cells you get by charging Ki or using his green, and this character looks like they're charging Ki in that classic Dragon Ball fashion right there. So those are the 3 gauges. Cells, of course, also gives him health back, gives him buffs, makes him stronger. Cell and Trunks both have gauges that start at 0 and go up. UI Goku starts at full, decreases over time if you just don't use it, or when you actually activate the gauge by dodging attacks just by standing there. And you can increase Goku's gauge, as I explained with the blue cards, and Trunks and Cell, once they get to max, and that's it. Their gauges are basically done at that point. They've served their purpose. They've given them the buffs. But we have a 4th. There's a 4th gauge found in the archives of Dragon Ball Legends. This, a fist, which, as Spoon mentions, labeled attack, so it seems to be attacking focused, which again would make sense because all the other gauges make sense. Charging Ki, looks like he's charging Ki. Defense, a chest plate, and dodging, moving, it looks like the character's, floating to the side as you would when you dodge and move. So an attacking gauge. Well, when you look at who like the most likely ideas are for Black Friday, we of course have the thought of MUI Goku. There's a LF Super Gogeta or an Ultra. Again, it could be either or. I've seen the idea float around, maybe we get transforming Blue Boys of Gogeta and Vegito. That would be super fun. Lots of super hype ideas. We're going to need to see some more stuff to try and lock down, pinpoint a critical thing. And I'm sure we'll be getting that soon because Christmas is coming up on us, ladies and gentlemen. We're, what is it? I can't even think. We're a little over 2 weeks away. So Christmas is definitely sneaking up on us. But attack gauge, what does this mean? Well, Spoon here on his Twitter, he says, swap the boycott icon with the attack just to double check that's actually in the game, and it confirmed it. Going to check if there's any abilities, which there probably are not. So you can see here on his gameplay, he has the attack gauge here, and UI Goku normally it would be the green one. And So people, of course, are trying to decide what their thoughts are on this new gauge. But what could it mean? Well, if they're going to bring it out with the new character, whoever it may be, which would make a whole lot of sense, because once we got Cell getting a new gauge, I thought, okay, we're going to start seeing gauges a lot more on LF characters. I mean, gauges are fun. Gauges are a super interesting concept, and I like what they've been doing with the gauges, so I'm so down for more gauges, whether that be on more LFs or even more ult units or regular units, but I think they're going to make it more of like a special thing, at least for a little while. And if we get this attacking gauge, well, if it's on MUI Goku, the attacking gauge would kind of make sense, because I'm going to assume you all have probably seen Dragon Ball Super if you're playing Dragon Ball Legends. And if you remember, Whis said the difference between UI Omen and MUI, or at least for Goku, was he was thinking about his attacks when he was in UI Omen. That's why he couldn't get to MUI. He was thinking about his attacks still, and so they weren't as powerful. They weren't packing the punch. You could see when he'd hit Jiren, it wouldn't deal as much damage as then when he gets to MUI, and he's just, autonomous, just letting his body do what it does. His attacks are a whole lot more powerful. So the difference was attacking. UI Omen was our first unit to get a gauge. Maybe they decide, all right, we'll give MUI this attacking gauge, which maybe it builds up by the more attacks you do, and then you get buffs at the end. Like, you do a certain amount of attacks, you get buffs, or it starts at the top and goes down, and then you end up getting, like, your attacks do more damage while the gauge is going down, kind of like how the Vanish gauge works, where it starts at the top, you use it, it decreases. This, when you attack, it decreases the gauge, and then your attacks become less powerful. I think this could be an interesting way to make MUI very strong, but only for a limited amount of time. As you see, it's not a transformation like, other units we have in the game that can transform, whether it be unlimited timer counts or they have a set amount of timer counts. This is a gauge. I'm sure you'd be able to refill the gauge using some sort of method. I doubt if it is decreases through attacks, then I would doubt that it's through attacking cards, because that wouldn't make any sense at all. The gauge would never go down. But maybe it would be through, you pop the main ability one time, resets the gauge, and you get a whole nother go through. Maybe it's green cards, boosts the gauge up. Maybe it's blue cards, just like UI Omen, boosts it up. Any of those things are a number of possibilities. Again, it depends, I guess, on what character. Not really, I guess. It could be the same for any character. But MUI would certainly make a whole lot of sense to get the gauge, simply based off the attacking thing. But they could easily throw it on to Super Gogeta, if they do Blue Boys, Vegito Blue, Gogeta Blue, either of those things definitely would work. Now, he has done some more, research into this gauge stuff, and he found that so far my latest find is being able to choose specific arts to increase unique gauge, and it doesn't have to land. I can also select multiple arts cards, and note that the amount of unique gauge increased is just for show. So you can see there, he has the gauge. He put it on Android 21, the purple one. And when she goes and uses her green card, it increases the gauge. Similar to with Trunks and Cell, when they use their green cards, increases the gauge. Now, he can put the gauge on a whole lot of people. And here, he's figured out that you can lock the gauge. Super interesting thing, having gauges be locked. And so they can't operate how they're supposed to because they're locked. Now, I believe Spoon does note with the lock. Yes, here. Here's a variety of situations where the blocked gauge takes place, and for the last bit, it is just the game having inconsistent damage, so a blocked gauge does not lose given effects, though this could change. So basically what he's saying there is when Trunks' gauge gets full, and then he has it locked, it doesn't take away the buffs that Trunks has gotten from his gauge being full. So the locking of the gauge is certainly an interesting mechanic. It could be something they apply to other units, whether it be on a certain card, like a green card, a blue card, a main ability, or any of those such things. They could start adding that to counteract gauges if we start seeing gauges more, because Legends loves to have, they bring out a new idea, like Endurance, they bring out something that nullifies that, nullification of Endurance. Revival units, they make it so it doesn't negate the revival, but it makes it so the unit comes back with less health, the other team gets more Dragon Balls, so you get rushed, and so they make all sorts of ways to counter things, so maybe they could be adding a blocked gauge. Now again, these things are in the game, but but that does not mean that we will get them. There are other things that Spoon has found in the past that have been in the game that we've never gotten. So I want to make that clear. That does not mean for sure we're going to see this attacking gauge, but I think this attacking gauge is different than some of the other things he's found, simply because we already have the 3 other gauges, and it would make sense to have some sort of gauge based around attacking, so I think we will see it. We don't know for sure. We don't know who the units are going to be for Christmas. We don't know if this gauge will show up. We don't know if they'll add the block gauge feature at all. It would make sense if they did, based on how they've done things in the past and their track record. But I want to know your opinions on all of this, so let me know your opinions in the comments down below. Who do you think we're getting for Christmas? Do you think they'll have this attacking gauge? Who do you think would work best with this attacking gauge? And I just love to hear what your guys' thoughts are. But I wanted to bring this to your attention because I find this to be super interesting and definitely exciting. Definitely some exciting news. So if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you leave a like. Subscribe if you're new. Go follow me on Twitch, live streams. I'd love to see you in the chat sometime. Talk to you live. And yeah, that's going to do it. I hope you all are staying happy and healthy, having the best of days. And I'll catch y'all tomorrow.